Hey, hello everybody. So today we are going to make pizza dough. And I'm going to make mine a little different from this recipe. We're going to try a little experiment. So, I'll show you this book. This is hilarious. It's called The Professional Pastry Chef, 3rd edition by Bo Freeberg. Look at this sucker. Holy smokes. So I picked that up at the local library. I would say before you go plunk down all your hard-earned money for cookbooks, and I do like a book I can hold and make notes in, and because a lot of times recipes are kind of messed up and you have to make changes. Anyway, let's get back to this. So you should read your books because some interesting things, like it calls for a ½ ounce of fresh yeast. And so what you might do is you might take your yeast and say, oh, this is fresh yeast. Well, I don't think it really is. You can get compressed, something called compressed fresh yeast. And so you need to use this. It says a ½ ounce, and I actually need to use a ¼ ounce of this. And so what I'm going to do is I have my handy dandy postal scale, which is incredibly accurate. I'm going to put that on, tare it, and then I'm going to add just the right amount of yeast. So let's get started here. First step is to put the cup on, turn it on, and now it says that that is 0. So that's called taring something. So now I'm going to need to put a ¼ ounce of yeast. Oop, too much. .28. We're going to call that good. Okay, so first step is dissolve the yeast in the water to help it along. So first thing we're going to do is we have our 3/4 cup of water. And this is going to be for weighing out flour. The other interesting thing about this cookbook is where other cookbooks will say use a cup of flour, this actually gives a weight, and you actually have to weigh your ingredients because it's much more accurate than saying a cup of flour, because you could kind of smash that in there and that cup could be all over the place. So there we go. What we're going to need to do is have something to stir. We'll turn that off now that we don't need that. Let's find ourselves a stirring utensil. This handy dandy spoon is also going to be our dough hook. You're going to find out they asked for something called a dough hook, which I don't really have. So what we're going to do is going to kind of help the yeast get dissolved a little bit. Kind of stir, 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 make it some kind of cloudy water. Okay. That's done. We'll use that to hold stirring implements. Clean up our space a little bit. Okay, dissolve the yeast in the water. Help it along by squeezing it with your fingers. We didn't really do that, we just kind of stirred it. Mix in the sugar, oil, olive oil, salt, and honey. This is a very interesting recipe. This is a lot of different things. So we're going to use a teaspoon of sugar. So let me go ahead and wipe out my yeast so I don't mix my yeast with my sugar. Get ourselves approximately a teaspoon of sugar. Kind of sprinkle it in. Oh, the yeast is loving that sugar. Okay. Sugar and olive oil. That's where this recipe is kind of interesting. That uses olive oil. We're going to be using 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We have some fine olive oil. And if I was a little more organized, I would have this a little better broken out. So we want 2 of these. 1. 2. Okay. Salt and honey last. How much salt do we need? We need a teaspoon of salt. Wipe off our sugar. Get ourselves some salt over here. This goes to show that you can cook in about 2 square feet if you have to. We just got the dishes done, so I have everything in dish drying mode. There we go. Bam. Okay. And last but not least, let's get some of that delicious honey in there. Oh, little honey bear honey. And a tablespoon of honey. I actually just made a double recipe of this last night. And I made 2 pizzas. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to use this to make kind of like a flatbread bread. If I can use the same word twice. So we actually have a couple kind of Middle Eastern stores around us that actually make pretty good pizza. And they also basically make a flatbread that you can buy. It's pretty inexpensive and pretty tasty. So I'm going to try to do the same thing and use this pizza dough to make a flatbread. We'll see how that comes out. This doesn't take very long. We'll be eating this before the day is out. Only takes a couple hours. Alright. Give that a little stir. Go. And that was the last of that. So here is where I'm gonna differ from the original recipe. It says add the flour and knead the dough. So what I'm gonna do a little different. Let me get my measuring device. It'd be better if I cleared out all the stuff I do not need. It's a problem with working in a small space. So this calls for 10 ounces of bread flour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 9 ounces of bread flour, I'm going to do a ½ ounce of cornmeal, and a ½ ounce of whole wheat. So we are going to do a little experimentation and see how that affects the character of the bread. Because this recipe is delicious, but I thought, you know, long story short, I used to work at a pizza place. That was my first job. And I used to wash dishes, and that place was called Aladino's, and they had absolutely delicious pizza. And they very closely guarded how the dough was made. They actually would make it when none of the employees were there. And then we would just handle the dough out of the fridge. So we do 9 ounces of this. But their dough had a very interesting character. And I really would say I've never had anything quite as good from any restaurant, any pizza restaurant. They're not in business anymore. The original guys sold it out, and those people who bought it out ran into the ground, and it went out of business. Alright, so let's get our stuff all over the place here. So now where we need to get a little tricky, I'm going to add an extra ½ ounce of cornmeal. Okay. Then we're going to do some whole wheat flour. So I've seen recipes that'll use a mixture. Oh, Katya! Baby's watching while I'm doing my video here. What they'll do is they'll do a mixture of bread flour and whole wheat. I wanted to be... There we go. I wanted to see what cornmeal mixed in there might do. Kick it up a notch. Alright. You know what I'll do. Awesome cooking show, Dan. Let's get that closed. Let's see, can you actually even see this? Yes, you can. So I'm just going to mix that in using a spoon as a dough hook. All the professional pastry chefs out there are cringing. Alright. we'll get to mixing this in. Trying to pick up all the loose ingredients off the walls here. See, already we're starting to get a dough-like consistency. It's certainly getting harder to knead. Really needed to figure out exactly what the heck a dough hook looks like and where I can find one. We have a restaurant supply nearby. They actually sell all kinds of interesting, you know, when at real pizza places they'll do, they'll cook the pizzas on a screen, a metal screen. And so they'll pull the dough out on this round metal screen, and that's what gets slid into the oven. And they actually have stuff like that. They have the nice large wooden spatulas that you can slide a pizza onto a stone maybe. Because one thing, the problem with stones is, you know, you can't lay out this dough on a hot stone. I think we're almost there. So you can't lay it out on a hot stone. It's hard to work with. But ideally, you'd like to put the dough onto, you know, a really hot surface. So if you had a wooden spoon, that little wooden spatula you'll see in professional pizza restaurants, you could kind of grease that up and then slide that onto a hot stone that's sitting inside of your oven. I think that would make a really good pizza. Okay, I think I'm good here. So my next step, I'm going to pause the video for a second. I'm going to go... Cool, just throw that anywhere, Dan. There you go. Well, I leave that in for the blooper reel. I could totally just dumped all my measuring devices on the floor. So I have this right here. I'm going to oil this. I'm going to transfer this to here. It's going to sit for a little over an hour. It's got a, what do they say in the instructions, it has to about double in volume. And after it doubles in volume, then you'll transfer that to the refrigerator for at least 2 hours. And at the professional pizza place, they would keep those in overnight. And they used a strange term, which I don't think is quite right. They called it proofing the dough. But if you read the term proofing the dough, and it's a little bit different process than what they were doing, just leaving it in a fridge overnight. So anyway, bunch of rambling here. So what I'm going to do, pause it for a second, we'll grease up this bowl and transfer it, and I'll... Alright, here we go. I have oiled the pan, or should the bowl. Oil the bowl. And the fun part is always getting this out. I like to use gravity. Look at that, it came out pretty nice. Pick out a couple waste not, want not pieces. Should probably make more of a mess than... And then what they want you to do is kind of roll it over on both sides so it's coated. And I can tell I already put too much oil in here, but whatever, life's rough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some saran wrap, cover that up, leave it for at least an hour or so till it doubles in volume, and that'll depend on how warm. It's kind of cold day, so our fridge is, our kitchen is kind of cold, so it might take the full hour. But anyway, let that sit. It's going to double in volume, and then you need to throw it in the fridge for at least 2 hours. So we'll come back and we'll let you see what it looks like when it's risen. Have a good day. Hey, hello everybody. So we are back. And that's what our bread looks like. It's been a little bit more than an hour. I'd say it's about an hour 20 minutes. So what I'll do is put that in the fridge, and it needs to sit for at least 2 hours in the refrigerator, and then it'll be ready to go. You can let this sit overnight. I imagine you could even go a couple days. Over at Trader Joe's, what do? They throw it in a bag. So I imagine you could also at this state throw it into a plastic bag, and it would probably last a few days in a plastic bag in the refrigerator at this state, and you can pull it out whenever you want to make pizza. Alright, we'll come back when we're ready to shape this into some dough and make it. Hey guys, sorry, so I totally skipped out here. So the dough sat in the fridge for 2 hours. I stretched it out and baked it for about 10 or 11 minutes. My wife made a delicious little oil and garlic spread. So half of it over here is covered with garlic and oil, and this half is just going to be plain bread for the kids. So we'll let you know how it tastes, and when I do pizza, I'll remember to record the missing step of where I stretched it out. Have a good day, everybody.